I have a hard time with this topic because it seems like this war was entirely avoidable. That if Biden didn't attack the energy sector, lift sanctions on Russia, and then when the CIA and all the NATO analysts were watching them build up their forces in October of 2021 and they did nothing, they just sat there and waited for them to cross the border. Now we're in. And there's a lot of critics who say it's kind of funny when the Afghanistan war ended, it was almost like we needed a new war to fund.
Yeah, it's an ugly situation. I think the only way to really understand it is, in addition to some of those elements you just laid out, we have a president who is a bribery target and has been receiving bribes from Ukraine for a very long time, since he was vice president, at least under Barack Obama. So that's one explanation. He's been there for them. He basically, I think, consummated the biggest bribe in the history of America last week when he met with Donald Trump. And basically the only thing he discussed with him or pushed with him was keeping the Ukraine war going and keeping the funding going. So that big smile on his face wasn't just because Kamala Harris lost. I think it was because he did right by his funders. But you also can't understand this, Andrew, unless you understand the level of Trump derangement syndrome from the Democrats. You know, yesterday on Sunday, well, at least on Sunday, Adam Schiff went on Jake Tapper on CNN and said, basically, I don't have any evidence the Russians rigged this election, but they did. In other words, you have a lot of people in this country who hate Russia so much because they believe this conspiracy theory that they're willing to fight to the last Ukrainian in this war to punish, in their minds, Putin. Unless you understand the bribery and the conspiracy theory stuff, you'll never understand why this administration has supported this war for so long.
What we watched in 2014 under Obama and Biden's watch, that they waltzed right in and took Crimea. No consequences, right? Then you had a situation where the Ukrainians were basically shelling their own people in the northern part of the country who are ethnic Russians. And we also promised Russia we would never surround them with NATO countries, and then we did, leaving the only keystone being Ukraine and the Black Sea. Now, I'm not saying that Putin's the good guy. I want him to lose this war. But with that said, you showed weakness in 2014, and then you allowed the buildup in 2021, and then it became this another forever war. How many young Ukrainian men are going to have to die because we've meddled in that country's affairs so much and turned it into a money laundering machine?
And it's worse than that. When has President Biden ever told the American people exactly what our goals and what our red lines were and when we would get out? He never bothered to do that. I mean, you know, at least when we were fighting in Vietnam or in Korea, President Truman and then President Johnson told us what the goals were. Now, they weren't being very honest, or at least they didn't uphold, or maybe they didn't uphold them. But Joe Biden has never even bothered to tell us exactly where do we end this, which is also really scary. It leads me to believe the man never cared about his own political capital being expended on massive amounts of money going to a war that could get out of hand. Now, that's the basic opportunity. You know, that's the basic responsibility of a president of the United States, to tell the American people where our liabilities are and where we're going to decide not to do this anymore, what our goals are. We were never told that, because I get the feeling that he realized that he was dealing with an electorate that was so angry at Russia, at least his own personal Democrat side, and he wanted to make sure that he did right by the people. You know, you talked about 2014. That's about when Biden started getting money. The Biden family started getting money from Ukraine. I think he wanted to do right by those people, and he also wanted to do right by these crazed anti-Putin conspiracy theorists who actually think they rigged another election with no evidence.